True or false? It doesn't matter what's between your legs. Copywriting has always been a meritocracy.
I've never done a spec assignment in my life. I consider it a four-letter word, the creative strategist, which it's pretty much what copywriters have always done. We've always done more than just produce copy.
Now, when my female clients make romantic overtures, I know exactly what to say to them.
Now you
Uh,
know, and they will respect you more. Naveen. I have known of people who have gone in-house, and then after a year or two, they kind of had to start from scratch. As my family grew and I had young children, I wanted to work no more than 20, 25 hours a week. From a very early age, as soon as you can afford it, just pay yourself first. My name is Kim Krause Schwalm. I've been in this business for a very long time. I know that was part of what you were looking for with your special guest. I've been in the freelance copywriting world since 1998, and then I've spent 13 years in the marketing world, doing everything from being a brand manager for a health insurance company to working at Phillips Publishing and helping to launch their Healthy Direction supplement business and growing that to the equivalent of over $40 million in annual sales within the first 3 years. So I had a lot of marketing experience getting into freelance copywriting, and working at Phillips, I saw the kind of lifestyle and earnings that were possible for the top freelance copywriters. And I'm like, I think I could do that. Let me do that, especially after I got back to work, went back to work after having my first child and realized I'd been pretty much mommy tracked. So I got the last laugh, I think. People can find out more about me and the training and mentoring programs that I offer at kimschwalm.com. It's KIMSCHWALM.com.
we're going to talk about a lot of stuff you've already talked about in your book. But first of all, I'll say, like, just go buy
It
the
is.
book. That's the number. That's,
I have
yeah.
little notes flag
Yeah,
pages.
client badassery secrets. Go buy the book. It's well worth the read. You mentioned that you were mommy tracked at your first company, and that's what kind of gave you like the little nudge to go into copywriting, working for yourself. True or false? It doesn't matter what's between your legs. Copywriting has always been a meritocracy.
I think as far as the freelance world, I would say that's mostly true. It's part of the attraction. Working and it was a great company. I don't want to bash this company or the people who ran it. I just really treasure the time I spent working there. But it was very much kind of old school when it came to there was not even maternity leave benefits, right? And then it was an interesting place. Many corporate environments, you find that there are sometimes a handful of people who aren't necessarily that great at what they do, but what they really know how to do is work behind the scenes and get opportunities for themselves. It's like a snake pit, really. And then you have people who are just, I think how I was, maybe I was a little naive, but are just good, working hard, getting great results, focused on producing, but not necessarily thinking about all the behind the scenes politics that needs to be handled. So I feel like you get that in any organization. It was probably not as bad at Phillips, to be honest, because they really did promote a lot of people from within, including myself. But that's just, I think, human nature. Unfortunately, when you're in an organization, whether it's an agency or corporation or even a church, there's always this hierarchy, there's power moves that happen. So, yeah, I think I was really attracted to copywriting because I knew that if I could be good and produce winning control promos or whatever it is I was working on, that I would be financially rewarded. And I didn't have to worry about playing politics or trying to get that next promotion or what to say to my boss or getting talked over in a meeting. Yeah, I think that in general, it's still true today. We can talk about that a little more. I think a lot of the opportunities these days are in-house and people or working on a long-term kind of retainer arrangement. And so you are definitely going to see more of those kind of power play moves going on, and copywriters need to be aware that's happening.
Speaking of power plays, I've noticed with some of the older school copywriters that they sometimes recommend what I can only call like status games when interacting with clients, just train clients how to treat the copywriter in the right way. So, for example, you get an email from a client, you don't reply back immediately. You like always take a couple of hours to reply back. Or if they ask you about your availability, you'll say, I'm available on such and such date when you have capacity now. Or when you quote a turnaround time, you might quote a few weeks out when you know that the work will only take you a few days. Does that stuff actually work?
I don't think I've ever quite advocated stretching the truth that much, but I think what you don't want to do is make it sound like you're just sitting around for the proverbial phone to ring or for the email to come through. And even if you're not that busy, it's better to take control and put it on your terms. So it might not be like, it sounds this is a really important project to you. And the other, just as an aside, it's going to take a couple days just to get everything organized anyway, because you never start on a project till you have that money in your account, right? The 50% advance. So, but you say it's possible I could start middle of next week. How does that work for you? Or maybe, and maybe for me, honestly, it was always true. I was booked up, or if it was something I really wanted to do, it was possible that I could maybe move a project around, especially if a client was saying, I know we booked you 6 months ago for a July start, but we're running a little behind. It might not be till August. So I kind of have that information in my head too. But I do think if you're a total newbie, it's not going to be believable that, oh, I'm booked up 2 weeks in advance or 3 weeks in advance, but you still want to kind of take control, knowing that you're not going to just start on this within the hour or tomorrow. You're going to want to make sure everything is done the right way up front.
So I think what you're saying is even if you are new or lack experience, it's just you want to take control and manage expectations.
You also want to make sure that you set expectations right, but you also don't come across as desperate. I think that's the number one thing. You never want to look desperate.
Well, so we're speaking about newer copywriters or inexperienced copywriters, and spec work is still a tactic that we use. And for those who don't know what it means, is spec work is you write a piece of copy for free or you do a little bit of work for free and you send it to the prospect in the hopes that it might turn into a sales conversation or turn into them hiring you. How do you do it in a way that doesn't waste your time and also doesn't allow prospects to potentially take advantage of you?
I've never done a spec assignment in my life. I consider it a four-letter word. However, I do know for a fact that people that I have coached and mentored and many other copywriters have been able to get some doors open, including even via some of my past mentoring groups. And here's how I recommend you do it. I don't recommend you go off and write something, especially something that's lengthy, from scratch and then send it to somebody, because even a good copywriter, there's the odds are you're not going to nail it, right? There's so much that goes into creating something. You have to interview the client, understand their market, their product, et cetera, right? You're not going to have that kind of inside info, just writing something on the outside. However, you can analyze their sales pages, their emails. And again, you've already narrowed this down. This is a prospect that you think fits your criteria. And maybe you see something that you think could be improved, or you get an idea for a new angle. I would put together a brief video pitching them on that angle, sell them on your idea, on your approach. I'd love to see how this would work. In fact, I'm willing to do this in a way that minimizes any risk to you. And then what I would propose is you be willing to do it upfront for free. And if they end up, whatever the performance indicator is, they get at least one sale from the email, or the new headline lead becomes their new control, then they pay you $1,000 or whatever the figure is, or maybe it's only $200 if it's an email, but you make that arrangement upfront, or that promise, that deal. And then if they choose to take you up on it, then obviously you get that in writing, and then you get whatever start kit materials you need so you can actually do a good job and create a winner, and then go from there.
You wouldn't be writing something like super long that takes you hours and hours to do. It's like maybe a single email or like a single creative or a
Right.
variation of one of their creatives.
Right,
So
like
something
find
easy.
a sales page that you keep seeing them send, like the email sending to the same sales page, for example. I can write, maybe I have a new idea for a new angle after studying that sales page. There's actually something really interesting here that I think would be a great email lift idea to flesh out. And then maybe in that case, maybe you do just draft something and send it over, because it's a pretty short copy. But I would always attach some kind of deal to it. Hey, if you decide you want to test this, if it works for you, I think $100 or $200 compensation would be great. And then hopefully we could talk about some future projects together.
I remember a few years ago, you and Chris Orzakowski had this debate about royalty deals. And
Yeah.
his position was that those royalty deals are like a relic of the dinosaur era of marketing where people were sending snail mail. And you said,
He
no,
said they
it's
were dead.
still
He said they were dead, and it was in 2018. I remember exactly when he said it.
now. With the rise of creative strategy positions, it's more and more likely that, or it is like a standard of remuneration that it's a base plus a percentage of ad spend. So royalties are back in full force. What are the most common royalty deals that you've seen, and how would you structure them in a way that is a win for you and a win for the client, especially in today's market and the way today's copywriting jobs work?
Just to be clear, there's still long form copy jobs out there, and people are still willing to pay royalties. And I'm not doing a lot of client work these days, but every deal, including one just earlier this year, has a royalty tied to it. And I still get royalty income from stuff I wrote 7 or 12 years ago, even, right? Royalties are not completely dead, and they definitely weren't dead back in 2018 when Chris wrote that. It was actually a blog post. But then after that, we got together on a Zoom call and we became really good friends. We actually even came out with a course that talked about royalties and retainer deals. But yeah, and then for the last several years, there's been with the email marketing, every smart company is doing their email marketing and realizing there's a lot of opportunity there. There's been great opportunities for copywriters to become basically email marketing managers for a client. You can maybe have multiple clients at a time on retainer when you're doing this, and you can set it up that you get a nice monthly retainer fee, but also you get what's called a revenue share deal. And I've known people who are getting as much as 10% revenue share on top of a pretty nice fat monthly retainer. And they've been able to really increase their earnings that way. And you're doing the copy, but you're also doing all the strategy and the implementation generally as well. And then, yeah, like you mentioned, in the last year or so, we've had the advent of the creative strategist, which one might argue it's pretty much what A-list copywriters have always done. We've always done more than just produce copy. And you've been a copywriter, so you know this. You're doing the research, you're analyzing the market, sometimes you're even contributing to the product development. So you're doing a lot more than just crafting copy. But this is almost on steroids for some of these people who are working as creative strategists, because the volume is just so great to produce so many ads. They're definitely not long form, but it's, you know, clients are really hungry for people, because with the advent of Andromeda, with Meta's advertising model, they have to constantly be creating all sorts of different hyper segmented ads that then they use to then figure out who the audience is. And so they need copywriters who can produce 40, 50 ads a week, right? So it's just, they got to feed the beast. So it's creating a lot of opportunity. And then for the copywriters who can actually create winning ads, and it's obviously very hard to do in the competitive market these days, but you can negotiate getting a percent of ad spend. So if you have one that's just really scaling, there is the opportunity to make basically the equivalent of royalties, commissions, whatever you want to call them. And from what I'm hearing, the standard is about 5% of ad spend, but it's just to know that if you're just starting out as a creative strategist, you're probably not going to get that. You're going to need to get at least a few winning ads under your belt that you can show clients, and then you'll be able to negotiate something like that.
We're freelance copywriters, or even if we're in-house copywriters, a lot of the work that we have to do revolves around having the clients respect us, right? How do you deal with unprofessional clients, or how do you set boundaries in a way that gets clients to respect you as the professional and as the consultant that you are?
You always want to have a contract, number one, right? Always have the agreement, have everything in writing, what the scope of the project is, that kind of thing. But the first time they ask you, can you throw in this? Can you add that? You've just got to go back to the agreement. If it's not in our agreement, but here's how I could do this, assuming it is something you can do, right? But you've got to put those boundaries right from the beginning. You can still, if you let a few things slide, you can still obviously say later, I let a few of these things slide, but we can't let this continue. And here's why. We have this agreement, and this is how it's going to have to be. So that's one example. There's always the ones that are always asking for a little more, or can you do this sooner than what we agreed, or whatever, right? The other thing that you might be hinting at that I do cover in my book is, and this can affect men, but a lot of times it affects women, and it's sexual harassment. And it doesn't necessarily mean the end of the client relationship. I know it might sound crazy. Of course, I'm a older generation woman. I don't know, but it's kind of like bad male behavior is just something I always grew up around. It's always happened. But the important thing is to learn how to shut it down. And I'll never forget back when I was at Phillips Publishing and the whole Anita Hill thing with Clarence Thomas was like in the news, and all the companies were doing sexual harassment training, just bringing in the lawyers just to cover their butts. And I'll never forget this 2 sentence phrase that was told that you say to put that person on notice, right? That they've crossed a line. And that is when you say or do whatever it is, it makes me uncomfortable. I want you to stop. And that's it, right? I didn't really need that for when I was working at Phillips, because like I said, General is a very good company, but I was out on my own and I had within a year, I had 2 different clients that did something or said something inappropriate. One I was actually in the car with driving to a lunch meeting and just met for the first time, and it was very uncomfortable. The other time it was just somebody I dealt with on the phone, and I used the phrase. It just jumped right in my head, and that was it. And we just moved on. And some of these people I worked with for years and years after with no issues. So it didn't necessarily have to kill the client, but it's like as soon as I said that, it was like, oh, she just put down a boundary. And I didn't make them feel awkward because it's not like an attacking phrase. Oh, you pervert. How could you say? It was just a very professional way of shutting it down. And then we just all moved on and it didn't happen again. And they respected me. I think they respected me more. So there are ways to just put down boundaries, whether it's something extreme like that or just somebody who wants you to add in, can you throw in a couple more versions? That's going to be $500 each. Sorry.
So for the scope creep thing, I learned this phrase from Alan Sultanich, where that's a separate conversation whenever they want something extra. Or if you want to be generous and throw in something for free, I learned this from Jason Swank. You send them an invoice for it at the actual rate, but then you discount it to 0. So they know that it's actual paid work that you did for them, but you're giving them a pass this time. So that might be helpful. The second thing is, so now when my female clients make romantic overtures, I know exactly what to say to them.
Now you know, and they will respect you more in the video.
I don't know if you've seen this TV show Mad Men, but those
Oh,
women
yeah.
were masters at fending off advances in a classy way, like without going scorched earth.
Yeah.
And I find that the women of today, they don't have that skill.
I don't have any personal experience with that. And again, I think that's maybe a broad generalization because I have a daughter who's in her mid-20s, and not that she's told me about anything like this that she's dealt with, but just knowing the kind of person she is, very mature for her age, I think she would find a diplomatic way to deal with it. I don't think everybody is out for vengeance and let's make this guy a scapegoat but sadly it does happen. It does happen. And I'm not saying it doesn't. And sometimes it's not deserved. So that's like that's a whole other conversation, as your person would say.
And you're right, it is a generalization. That situation that happened to you in the car, it happened to one of my clients who was a salesperson. And she was able to flip that into a massive deal where she basically
really?
blackmailed him into signing this contract.
I wouldn't necessarily advocate for that either. It's the kind of world we live in, and sometimes there's weird things that happen or misunderstandings. I'm not even saying either one of these were misunderstanding. But yeah, I think that as long as you know how to just stand up for yourself, I think that's just the bottom line. And I see this with sometimes men deal with this, right? And it's just, I don't know if I can ask for that much money, or I don't know if I can push back on that. And it's just learn to stand up for yourself and people will respect you more. It'll make for a smoother working relationship with your client. And it'll help you just feel more confident.
I see that a lot with just people in general. They'll have a situation come up and they tie themselves into knots. What do I do in this situation? I don't know what to do. Can you give me some advice? When the answer is just be honest and be direct. And usually that solves 99% of situations.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I opened my book with a story where I was probably all of 13 years old and I was like, Mom, or maybe I was 14. I'm like, when are we going to have dinner? And she's like, oh, I'm just waiting for Billy's friend to go home. And I'm like, I just go in my brother's room. I'm like, Johnny, you got to go home. We're going to eat dinner. Okay. And I come back. I'm like, hey, Mom, he's leaving. We can eat. She's like, what'd you do? And I'm like, I just told him to go home. And she's like, too nice. He's a 10-year-old boy. I'm sending him home so we can eat.
Funny story about that. In Scandinavian countries, the kid or whatever will excuse themselves to go and eat while the friend is still in the room and the friend doesn't get invited to dinner or lunch or whatever. The friend is wondering where the person went and they're downstairs eating dinner. A couple of times it went viral because people from Eastern cultures We do not understand that behavior at all. So if the friend is there, he's most welcome to join us at the dinner table. I got into copywriting because I wanted to freelance, work for myself, right? But in some cases, copywriters will be asked to work in-house. And for me personally, I would never want to give up my autonomy, even if I made less money. But sometimes they make you a good offer to work in-house, and you might want to seriously consider it. What are some of the pitfalls or warning signs or things that they need to be careful of if they decide to take a job in-house?
Well, that's a great question. Some people will go in-house and maybe negotiate an arrangement where they can still do work on the side for their existing clients or even new clients. And I would say I would keep that as an escape hatch if you need it. But the big thing is you want to make sure you still keep your network, because I have known of people who have gone in-house, like already built up a pretty established base of clients and a reputation. And then after a year or two, maybe it didn't work out or they left for whatever reason, and it kind of had to start from scratch. So you really want to, if you've been developing relationships with clients, keep that network going. And because you just never know, nothing is forever, right? Something could be great now and 6 months from now, who knows, right? And I think that a lot of these strategies, like standing up for yourself, sometimes you do have to push back on the amount of work. For example, I have a friend who went in house for a couple years with this one company, and she was making great money, but it was like little unreasonableness with the demands from the client. For example, if I'm working on a project or you're working on a project with a client as a freelancer, and they're like, yeah, we're going to do this. Here's what the funnel is going to be. And we're going to have this 3 different downsells or upsells or whatever it is, right? And you get it all sketched out. You know what the plan is. You're writing all the copy. And if they start changing it, you're going to say, wait a minute, that's going to be a change. That'll be $500 extra or whatever. But when you're in house, so like in her situation, they were just changing it like this, like that, rewrite this, rewrite that. But you're like an employee, right? So you just have to. So I say, watch out for those kind of situations because they just become intolerable, and you're just going to have to be able to push back. And this is yet another reason to keep your client network still going, because you need to be able to walk out if you have to, if it gets out of hand. But it can work out great, and they can get ahead, get promotions, earn more money as they start to. It's going to give you advantages. Actually understanding all the numbers and seeing things from the inside is going to give you a huge advantage when you go back outside again. So it's really invaluable training. So I would suggest, if you have an opportunity like that, just take full advantage of it. Find mentors, people that you can learn from. And like I said, still keep your network going outside the company. But it can be a great opportunity. So those are some of the things you have to look out for.
So let's
Okay.
say I'm at full capacity, right? And I've got this lead that comes in. It looks like a sweet project, but I might be too busy. I don't want to say no to this person. What can I do in this situation?
I think there's a couple situations, a couple of options. If it really is something you'd love to work on and you think you can find at least a little bit of time to spare, and you have somebody that you trust as a really good copywriter who maybe would jump at the opportunity to work with you on this project. I have done this on multiple occasions where I've been very open with the clients that I can't do this myself right now, but there's this other copywriter we've teamed up before on projects. We've had some successful winners, and I could bring her in and we could work as a team, and I would be copy chiefing everything. It'd all be Kim Krause Schwalm quality. And I still charge my same rate, right? And I've never had them turn me down, and I still negotiate the same royalty, whatever the deal is. And then I work out my arrangement with the other copywriter. If it's a really experienced copywriter, generally it's 50-50. Maybe if I've done it a few times with a less experienced copywriter, maybe it's not as much. Totally depends on the fee. But then I still handle all the client relationship. So I'm not handing that over, but it's basically reducing my workload by at least 70-80%. The key is make sure you have a good copywriter that you're working with. But yeah, that's a way to still have that project and then still potentially have the royalties coming in. This one person and we got multiple controls together over the years. And another thing you can do, if it's it's maybe not 100% right for you, or you don't have a person you can bring in, or you just don't have any extra time to spare, is share it with a friend, right? If you know somebody, because rather than just send the potential client packing, you can at least say, I actually know of a copywriter who might be a really good fit for this. I know I can't do it for whatever reason, but would you like me to make an introduction? And then you just do that. And I've never taken a fee or anything for that from anybody. It's just I'll make the introduction and I'll tell the other copywriters, like I haven't really checked this person out yet, but it sounds like a good opportunity. So do your due diligence. And then what generally happens is what goes around comes around in this industry. I have helped so many people, even early in my career. I've done a referral and people have referred work to me and it just goes around. So I feel if you can help, if it seems like a good potential client, you can't do it. Why not send them to somebody that you think can help them? And that can also benefit.
So that kind of increases the ceiling on your potential income without you having to do more work. On that topic, what would you say are like the top 3 moves that you made that had the biggest impact on your income throughout your career?
Definitely going from just writing one-off copywriting jobs like short copy that was a flat fee and being able to break into long form and royalty paying copy. And that took me at least 2, 3 years to start getting some of those projects to even have a shot at. And then I had several bombs and but got a few big winners early on. And that's what allowed me to then just do maybe 5 or 6 projects a year. And just to kind of go back, like when I first went freelance, and again, it doesn't sound like very much, but I was probably working at least 40 plus hours a week. But what I wanted as my family grew and I had young children, I wanted to work no more than 20, 25 hours a week, right? So I was able to go from 40 plus hours a week to 20 to 25 hours a week, basically working when my kids were at school and making at least 3 to 4 times as much. What allowed me to do that was focusing on a handful of high quality royalty paying projects and really being able to do that. And then eventually I started having my own email list, having my own products and courses. And that's another way to increase the money that's coming in addition to what you might be doing as a copywriter. And now, as you may know, I'm in kind of a semi-retirement mode. So I'm doing less of all of that. But that's been part of it too, is it was just been really fun and satisfying to share my knowledge and to help other people succeed in a field that has just been so good to me and good for my lifestyle with my family and my children. And the other thing I would recommend highly is that from a very early age, as soon as you can afford it, just pay yourself first. Always put money aside, have an IRA or there's all these different ways. Just make sure you're saving, max it out if you can, and then spend the rest and enjoy it, but pay yourself first. And when you do that, starting at a young age, we all know that compounds over time, but it's never too late to start. But that's another reason why I'm able to say, yeah, I think I'm not going to do client work anymore. I think I'm going to just retire or go take a vacation or whatever. It's just really important to pay yourself and build that over time.
I think that last one is really important. Kim, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. This really flew by. It was a great conversation.